Okay. 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 Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you all here. Today is Wednesday. It is the 26th of February, and we're getting ready for the Parsha of Terumah. This is the Parsha where we're going to begin to discuss the building of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, and that's going to take us through to the end of Sefer Shemos. So I want to share with you a couple of Divrei Torah on this week's Parsha that I hope will enlighten your understanding of the Parsha and make it more meaningful as well. So let's start on page 1. So page 1, we're going to start talking about the Aron, the ark, that golden ark that was going to be built for the Mishkan, for the tabernacle, and it was going to house the Aseres HaDibros, the Luchos, the tablets of the law. So the verse says, the pasuk says there, we're on the top, Vasu Aron, we're supposed to make an Aron, this ark. Atzei shitim, it's made out of this type of wood. They always translate it as acacia wood. Amasayim v'chetzi arko. So let's see, what are its dimensions? It's 2.5 cubits in length. So it's 2.5 cubits in length. I'm just a visual guy. I'm writing this down. V'ama v'chetzi rachbo. And then it is 1.5 wide. So it's 1.5 wide. And then it says v'ama v'chetzi komaso. And it's also 1.5 tall. So you have this golden box. Remember, it's going to be a wooden box, but it's going to be both inside and outside covered in gold. So it's going to be almost like a rectangle, because the box itself is an amma and a half tall. It's an amma and a half wide, but it is 2.5 amos long. Remember, an amma is a cubit. That is the distance between the elbow and the top of the middle finger on the average person. Very convenient measuring tool, because everyone's what? No, they say it's about 1.5 feet usually, and I'm about 1.5 feet. But it was a very convenient measuring tool, because you didn't have to take it out of your tool belt or anything like that. Everyone's got an amma, so that was the way that's the cubit. And then as opposed to the tefach, which is the fist of the average sized person. So this was our great measuring tools that the Torah gives us. Okay, so the dimensions are going to be, again, it's 1.5 amos tall. So if you think about that, that's going to be about 1.5 feet tall. It's going to be 2.5 amos long, and it's going to be an amma and a half wide. That is the dimensions of the Aron. And then it tells us, Vitzipisa oso zahav tahor, it should be overlain with pure gold, mibayis umichutz, both on the inside and the outside, titzapeno. That's how it should be covered. Vasisalav zer zahav saviv, and then there should be like a golden crown around the edges on top. So we're told the dimensions in that first verse, and in the second pasuk, in the second verse, we're told that it's got to be gold on the inside and on the outside. So let's take a look. We're going to see a couple of items today from the Tosefes Bracha. The Tosefes Bracha, again, that's Rabbi Baruch Halevi Epstein, the same author of the Torah Temimah. So let's see what he does with this. He's going to focus on the dimensions in this first piece. He says, V'asu aron atzei shitim. So this ark that was going to be built was made of wood. Amasayim v'chetzi arko. It was 2.5 amas long. V'ama v'chetzi rachbo. It's an amma and a half wide. V'ama v'chetzi komaso. An amma and a half tall. So you got this rectangle. B'chol ha'kelim, when it comes to all the other items, the utensils of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, lo motzinu shemidas amos shalem tia b'midas chatzi amma mikol tzadav. You don't find that with the other utensils that were going to be built, that there's a half. Here it says specifically when it comes to the Aron, there's a half on every part of it. There's no way to escape it. It's 2.5 long, 1.5 tall, 1.5 wide. You'll see what some of the other utensils, like the shulchan, we're going to get to soon. The table with the showbread, we're going to get to that soon. That was 2.5 long. But again, when it comes to the other dimensions, you'll see it's amma v'chetzi rachbo, 1.5 wide, and then amma v'chetzi komaso, just 1 amma tall. So you don't find with any of the other kalim that it was a half on every side. This one with the ark, with the aron that's being built, there's a half on every side. So what's unique? There must be some message. And let me just take a step back and preface this. When you study the all the commentaries when it comes to the construction of the Mishkan and the tabernacle, they're all coming up with so much deeper meaning and what it's a metaphor to, the lesson to be learned of, because there's so much space given in the Torah to all the details that go into the Mishkan. There's got to be some lesson behind all this. So therefore, you'll find all the commentaries are spending time saying, what's the lesson potential be learned out of this? They have so many theories. So we're going to see a theory, the Tosefes Bracha, that this author is going to be giving us. What is the message God might be wanting to send us when it comes to the Aron, the Ark? Every way, every angle, there was always a half. It wasn't just okay on one part it was a half, on our part the other parts all every angle, no matter where you measure the Aron, there's always a half there. So again, let's see that again inside. B'chol kelim, with all the other items of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, lomatzinu shemidas amos shalam tia b'midas chatzi ama mikol tzadav. You don't find it that every side, every measurement, there's a half. But here, when it comes to the ark, every way you measure it, there's always going to be a half. Ba'orach, b'rocha, b'koma, whether it's the length, the width, the height. Zulas ba'aron, it's just the aron, just the ark, that no matter how you measure it, you're always going to have a half. It's impossible that that's an accident. There must be a message God's wanting to teach us when he's telling us no matter how you measure the ark, when you pull out your tape measure, pull out your Alma stick, you're always going to have a half. What's the lesson that God may have wanted to teach us? Here's the theory he's got. It's possible to say the following theory. Here's what he proposes. We've learned earlier, Ki inyan ha'aron romez laTorah. The aron represents, the ark represents the Torah, because that's what was housed inside of it, was the tablets of law, was the Aseret Dibros, the Luchos. So inside of this was the Torah. So the aron was always seen as representing the Torah. But since the tablets are guarded inside the ark represents the Torah. Lefiza Karav Lamar. Now that we know that the Aron is representative of the Torah, now I want to propose the following idea. Whenever we say something is a half, Balaramez, that's coming to hint to us, Shechacham im kol chachmaso, no matter how wise a person is, no matter how much they've studied, lo yachshov, they should never think, ki kvar hegia l'shlemus chachmas haTorah, that they've mastered their understanding of the Torah. No matter how you measure the Aron, there's always going to be a half. It's never complete. To send us the message, we should never get confident. Oh, I've studied that already. I don't need that. No matter how many times we think we've studied something, there's always something new to learn. It's impossible to fully master it. No matter how much a person has studied, no matter how much Torah someone has studied, they're always at a half, meaning they're never at a complete, they've never reached completion. In the Gemara, they'll sometimes use this term, palga biyadcha, half is in your hand. So it says, Ya'an, ki Torah arucha me'eretz midah. Why is this so? Because unlike all other matters of wisdom, the Torah is just infinite. It's impossible for a human being to fully master something which is divine. God alone is the only entity which could fully grasp and master the Torah. For the rest of us, it's a lot. We're supposed to spend a lifetime of learning because there's always more to uncover. There's always more to understand. V'karov od lamar, and it's also possible to say ki al ken yikra hachacham. That's also why when it comes to a Torah scholar, we always refer to him b'shem talmid chacham, a student wise man. You ever notice that? Whenever you're talking about someone who's a scholar of Torah, we always refer to him as a Talmid Chacham. As a woman, it will be a Talmidah Chacham, either a Talmidah Chachama. I don't know exactly what is the feminine Talmidah would be, but I don't know what it would be. Talmidah Chachama, probably. So in other words, but there's always the Talmid. There's always this concept of a student. Someone never leaves the status of being a student when it comes to the Torah. V'lo stam Chacham. We don't call someone who's a great scholar, oh, he's a chacham. We always say he's a Talmid chacham. No matter how old the person is, no matter how many times they've been through it, they're still viewed as a student. Mishum da chachma hashlema v'amitis, because when you want to talk about absolute wisdom, that can't be improved upon, that can only be attributed to God. God is the only entity that can't sharpen the understanding of the Torah any further because he's the divine. But for the rest of us, there's always work to be done. The Adam HaChacham, a human being who's wise, Hurak Berach Talmud. No matter how wise that human is, they're still a student. There's still more to be studied. Because they're a student when they're, I guess, in reference or in comparison to God, they're always going to be considered a student. So he says, That's why the Gemara sometimes refers to God as the ultimate wise one, because there is no secret, there's no secret that's hidden from God. That's impossible for a human being. So when it comes to us, we could have a lifetime of study, but we're still students. We can never absolutely master the material. God, he could be referred to as a chacham because he could master that. But for the rest of us, we're always going to be students. And he wants to say that's an illusion. Perhaps that's what the measurements of the ark of the Aron, what it's alluding to. The fact, no matter how you measure it, it's always a half. There's always more to be done, and that's something for us to bear in mind. I thought that was a fascinating idea. But now I want to share with you on side 2, what lesson can we learn from the other pasuk, the other verse? We saw 2 verses about the Aron, about the ark. One was that the measurements of it, and then on page 2, we're going to focus on what's the lesson that might be learned from the other pasuk, the one that says that it's got to be covered with gold, both on the inside and the outside. So let's take a look again. The Tosefes Bracha that's on the top of page 2. He says, "V'tzipiso some zahav tahor mibayis michutz." What he says, what might the lesson here be? What might the lesson be that the internal material of the ark might be wood, but it's got to be covered on both the outside and the inside with gold, pure gold. What might the lesson be? So he says, "B'chol hakelim shebaparsha kan." All of the other utensils that are described in this parsha, lo motzinu prat zeh l'tzaposam zav mibayis u'michutz. We don't find this requirement to cover them both on the inside and the outside with gold. Rak kan ba'aron, only here when it comes to the ark. V'yacharei, so what's his theory? Yacharei ki yadua, he says it's known, as we just spoke about in the last paragraph, haron meramez l'torah. The ark is supposed to hint, and it's supposed to teach us attitudes that we're supposed to have when it comes to the Torah, but also to scholars. Just like we wrote above, since the ark contained the tablets. And it had those Seres Hadibros in there, Shem Yisodei Torah, which is the basis of our entire Torah. Therefore, the ark is always seen, the Aron is always seen as an allusion to the Torah and to those who toil over it. Based on this, here's a theory as to why it was so important to God that the Aron, the ark, the wood of the ark had to be covered both on the inside and the outside with gold. L'ramez, to teach us, al Talmud Chacham, someone who's a student of the Torah, a scholar, shetzarech lios tocho kibaro. They've got to be consistent. They're inside and they're outside. They can't just be on the outside, seemingly to be living some type of a spiritual life, but on the inside, when no one's looking or in the privacy of their home, they're not living a godly lifestyle. A true Talmud Chacham, they're consistent. What the world sees and what the world doesn't see. So just like on this ark, no one's ever going to see the inside, right? We covered the gold outside. Who's opening it up and peering around on the inside to see if it is? But nonetheless, it's still covered with gold, and the instructions are out there. He's suggesting to teach us that's the way, as Torah Jews, that's what we're supposed to be. There shouldn't be a difference between what the world sees and what the world doesn't see. Our inside's got to be just like the outsides. Just like externally, as someone who's an ambassador of the Torah, we're out there and we're showing or teaching lives of faith, of righteousness, and going on the straight and narrow. Bar levav v'nikiyon kapayim v'shar midos tovos, and that the fact that we're showing that we've got a good heart, and that we're showing that we've got clean hands, we're not doing anything suspicious, we're not engaged in anything that might be improper, and all other good attributes that we could possibly display for the public, because that's my job. I'm supposed to be an educator, whether that's to my children, whether it's to the children who see me, whether it's to family, whether it's to students, whether it's the community. We're always supposed to be conducting ourselves in tip-top form. But then we also need to conduct ourselves. That has to be what's inside us as well, and what goes on behind closed doors. Like the Gemara tells us in Yoma, the Talmud says, Kol Talmud Chacham Shein Tocho Kabaro. If you have someone who is supposedly a scholar and their insides and their outsides do not match up, Eino Talmud Chacham, that's not a true scholar. Klomar, Eino Roy Letar Talmud Chacham. They don't deserve to be wear the title of a Talmud Chacham. We need to be consistent. Because merumaz b'mashal tzipoy zahav tahor mibayis, which means in the inside, mibifnim, or mibechutz, and on the outside. So I thought that was a very nice idea that he's saying the symbolism of why is it that the Aron is covered with gold, both inside and out, is to remind us about the consistency that we need to have in our lives. And it's not enough just to put on a show for the public, but we've got to be certain that when nobody's looking and when we're in private, we're also conducting ourselves. We're taking the high road, and we're living lives that we'd be proud of. Now, I want to share with you one more idea, an additional idea. And let's look at the next one on page 2. This is from the Beis Halevi. So this is from the original Rav Soloveitchik. So this is from the original Rav Yosef Dov Halevi Soloveitchik. So he's known as the Beis Halevi. He's got a different take on what a potential lesson might be from the fact that the Aron, the wood of the Aron, was covered both on the inside and the outside with gold. Look what he says. This is a very different take. He says, "Vitzipiso so zahav mi bayis umichutz titzapenu." So the Beis Halevi says as follows: "Efsher liramos." Perhaps the Torah is offering us the following hint: "The Aron Hakadosh hu makom shemunach bo Torah." We know that the Aron is the place that the Torah is kept, because that's where the luchos, the tablets of law, are. V'chein hu hatalmid chacham halomei Torah lishma. So similarly, a real scholar who's really studying the Torah for its own sake and is a community treasure, because we want people like this in our midst, umitzvahu lachaziko. We want to do what we can to support such a true scholar, enable that scholar to continue their studies. Vial Yomar, a person should not say, Homar, dai la talmid chacham im aspik lo tzarchei mizonosav. It's enough that, okay, I want to support this talmid chacham. I want to support this true scholar who's truly studying Torah. So you know what I'll do? I'll make sure that he doesn't starve and his family doesn't starve. I'll make sure that they have food in the fridge and in the cupboard. Shia libo panoi lilmod, and that way, by knowing that they have food, that'll enable that scholar to truly study. Why does this guy need to really have a clean pair of clothes? It's enough that I'll just take care of this scholar, that they're not starving. But, I'll stop my support there. Why do I care that the scholar really looks nice as well? Has shoes that aren't falling apart. This comes the Torah to hint us. Just like we take care of that Aron, we make sure it's got gold on the inside and on the outside. Those treasures, those communal treasures that we have, those people who are truly studying Torah like they're supposed to, so we need to take them as well. It's not enough that just we want to stop them from starving. That's me bias on the inside, but we want to make sure michutz on the outside, what everyone can see, that they also look nice. That there's two ways we need to make sure they're supported. We got to make sure internally that in his household, he and the family, they've got what to eat. We also want them to look nice in the eyes of others, that they've got clothes to wear. dirasam in their living arrangements, b'chol inyaneim. So I thought that was a very interesting take on this too. That he's telling us, sometimes, we might say that, okay, this I took care. Here it is. I took care of that scholar. I made sure they're not hungry. Did they really need a new pair of shoes? Do they really need a tie that's not stained? That's fine. But he says, no, this is the lesson of the Aron is mibayis and michutz. We've got to make sure that they look good on the outside as well. So I thought that's a fascinating twist on this. So we saw one again from the Tosafos Bracha on this was that it's a lesson for the Talmud Chacham himself. Make sure that they're consistent. What the world sees is what they're doing behind closed doors as well, and that reflects their innermost, their innermost. A person is consistent with the image they're giving to the outside. But then the second lesson from the Beis Halevi is it's not a lesson for the Talmud Chacham, rather a lesson for us. Those of us who are taking care of the Talmud Chacham, let's make sure that all their needs are met, not just that they're not starving, but also that they've got they're looking respectable on the outside as well. I want to tell you that when I'm in New York Sukkot time, I always thought this is so nice. When I'm in New York Sukkot time to pick up and select the lulavim and esrogim for everyone, so the same person who is involved with the lulavim and esrogim, he's got a little side hustle. So it's like explain to you. I only found out about this like a couple of years ago. What's his side hustle? That he has, together with a couple partners, they've approached uh, a couple clothing companies, the manufacturers, and they basically provide suits and shirts and ties at cost price for people who are either rabbis, Jewish educators, or in Kol Honors. It's a really discounted cost. It's not free, but they're getting it at cost price from the manufacturers. Are basically getting a tax write-off that they're selling it to them at cost price, and then they've got this like they must have some showroom somewhere where it's just they're set up by sizes, and there are nights of the week where I guess the rabbis and educators and whatnot in the New York area know that they could go and shop for Yom Tov there. So on a couple of occasions, I didn't have time to go to the place or anything like that. But I've asked him. I said, that sounds like a great idea. Can I give you my size? You'll send me a suit or two. I'll happy to pay for it. And he's done it. It's always been wonderful quality. There's no name in it. He told me they're not allowed to put a name. And since they're getting it at cost price, they're not allowed, I guess. Yeah, yeah, they take care of that too. Yeah, they take care of that also. And but so it's interesting. Like I said to him, I said, "What brand is this?" He goes, "They're not allowed to put their tag in it because since it's they're getting it at a discount and selling it this way, they can't put their tag." He'll tell me, he goes, "But I'm told it's the same stuff that ends up in stores A, B, and C." That's what he'll tell me there. But I thought it's a fascinating thing. So yeah, I've gotten some shirts from him. The ties is always hard because if you're not there in person, it's hard to really see what color is that. He can send me a picture of it, but it's hard to tell my phone. But I've gotten a couple suits and whatnot from him. So he told me a really funny story about this. He said that he was one of the people, I guess, who got this ball, and it seems like every year it grows, how many suits they were able to get and to distribute. So he told me a really funny story. He said that one of the initial people who was doing this was, a Jewish manufacturer. Then he got a couple of his friends involved. He started saying this is a great charity, that there's all these educators, that they're not getting a full salary based on, times are tight. The schools can't pay them that much. And this is something we could do before their holidays that we're sending suits and they're able to buy them at cost price like this, and they're saving a lot of money. So he had some non-Jewish associates who said that's such a beautiful idea. We want to do this charity as well. So they started donating some suits and shirts and all this. And then he told me, so again, this is what he's doing. This lulav and esrog dealer. This is what he's doing that as a chesed. The lulav and esrog stuff. That's a business for him. So he said one of these non-Jewish associates came to see him once, I guess to drop some stuff off, and he came in and he saw the warehouse where he's got all the lulavim and esrogim. So he started asking, like, what's going on here? So he starts explaining to him, well, we got this holiday, and with the holiday, there's these four species that we need: the palm frond, the citron, the myrtle, and and the willow. And he's explaining all this. So he says, I love it. I love this one too. He goes, okay, how do I get involved in this one? So he says, no, no, no. He goes, the clothing is my charity work. This one, this is the one. This is a charity. This is the one. It was a funny thing, but so we had to explain to him, if you want to get involved in my charity project, that's the one with the clothing. This one.
They can't exactly make suits for priests, though.
What's that?
They can't make suits for priests.
No, but this.
They're laughing.
Yeah. Oh, because of the collar. Yeah, but that was but anyhow, that was a great thing. Anyhow, so that's what I was thinking of when I saw this Beis Halevi, is he was talking about this idea about that we want to just not make sure that people are fed, but that they're looking respectable as well. Yes, Shali.
The flip side of this.
Yeah.
Somebody is dressed and looks perfectly like a very frum person.
Yeah.
On the outside, but on the inside,
they're not. Correct, and that's what the Tosefes Bracha was getting at. That's what he was saying. Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's very bothersome, and you'll find in your sources, right? There's nothing worse than that, because that gives everyone a bad taste, and when that person gets caught for whatever it is they're doing, oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. It gives everyone a bad taste, and it makes everyone lose respect for any, correct, 100%, 100%. And it's terrible. Every now and then something like this will happen. I've seen great rabbis like yell at the person, say like, "Why'd you go into court wearing your yarmulke?" Like, well, why did you do that? You're being put on trial for this crazy embezzlement, and now you want to come in there looking like you found God again, like you're out. It's just giving everyone a bad taste. But you should know this goes on outside the Jewish community too. How many times people have come to sentencing clutching their Bible, to show like, I'm a changed person. I found God. So, but it's a terrible thing. It's absolutely, absolutely terrible. And it gives everyone a bad taste. One of my brothers told me in Israel, I don't know if you've seen this in Israel, there's, everyone loves ice cream because it's a hot climate. So glida is a very, very big deal. There's ice cream stands everywhere when the weather's warm. In the winter, though, people aren't buying so much ice cream because it's cold. But people, they still need something sweet. So there's this uniquely Israeli a treat called the krembo. It's pure sugar. It's basically this cream puff that's covered with chocolate. And then on the bottom, there's some kind of, sometimes it's a cracker, a wafer, or something like that. It's just grossly sweet. Kids have this stuff. Like once you get older, you're like, but they would refer to it as glidat choref. This is winter ice cream because on the one hand, it kind of looks like ice cream. It's this big like puff covered with chocolate, so it looks like ice cream. And these kids are, slopping this out and everything. But it's called a krembo. I don't know why it was called a krembo, because cream probably krembo. That was what they called. So one of my brothers told me that it was slang in Israel for a while. That if someone was ostensibly on the outside, being looking like a very religious person, and dressing the garb, but inside or in private, that's not the life they were living. They were referred to as a krembo. Because how was that krembo? On the outside, you saw that chocolate. It was looking all dark, but on the inside was a different color. It was white. It was all like so. I don't know. I don't know. He told me that was a real put down, like you would say, that person's such a krembo. That's what he meant by that. Like he was a real faker. Was it? Yeah, I don't know if it still is. I remember this.
Back for them during the summer.
So I don't know how it would work because it would get crushed,
They can't sell it in the summer because it melts.
Oh, because in other words, it's too hot. That melt would. Yeah, that's what they call it. They call it glidat choref, and it doesn't need to be. They just leave it on the shelves, and so that's what they call. But that's what he told me. So that was the slang. That was the put down. If someone was a faker like this, they called him a krembo. Yeah, what a
Rabbi,
what's that?
This is the exact verse that I use when people say they don't understand the Torah. Is that I say there's 4 levels of meaning. And when God told Moses how to build the ark, gold on the outside and gold on the inside, God was saying, I want your outsides to match your insides.
Yeah, that's what the Tosefes Bracha is saying, is that's our lesson to be learned from this, is that we got to be consistent. We can't project this image that we're some kind of pious individual, and then when someone's not looking, there's embezzlement, there's thievery, there's something nasty and ugly, real ungodly activities going on. That's a terrible way to live. And that's what he's saying, that what the message of gold on the inside and the outside is that we want to be consistent. We want to be absolutely consistent with that. Very good. All right, let's go to page 3. Page 3, we're going to see something involving the shulchan. The shulchan was the table, and the table was a table for the showbread. That's how they always refer to it. It would have the lechem apanim. So in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, and then later in the Beis Hamikdash in the temple, there would be this special gold table that would be set up, would have special loaves of bread on it, and there's a lot of symbolism there as well. So let's see what we've got here. So we're on page 3. So it's Perek Chaf chapter 25. So we're going to see 2 psukim. We're going to contrast them to each other. So the first pasuk is Yud, which we just saw when it had to do with the Aron, and we're going to contrast that to Chaf Gimel 23, that has to do with the Shulchan, with the table. So let's see, we're going to contrast the Aron and the Shulchan. Let's see. 10 again, Yud, that's the Aron. What were the measurements of the Aron? It said, V'asu Aron atzei shitim, amasayim v'chetzi arko, so it's 2.5 long, amav v'chetzi rachbo, it's 1.5 wide, and then it's amav v'chetzi, so 1.5 tall. So again, so it's 2.5 long, it's 1.5 deep, and it's 1.5 tall. That's the Aron. Now let's look at the shulchan, slightly different measurements. It says, Asisa shulchan atzei shitim. We're supposed to make a shulchan, this table, also its base is going to be acacia wood. Amasayim arko, so again, it's not 2.5 long, it's 2 long. Amasayim arko, amarachbo, and it is 1 wide, and it's amavachetzi kamaso. So like the Aron, it's 1.5 amos tall, it's 1.5 cubits tall, but the dimensions of it, instead of being 2.5 and 1.5, it's 2 and 1. So you see, this doesn't have the halves. That's kind of what we were seeing before.
Small to you?
Yeah, it's not as big as what we thought, right? So again, the individual showbreads were basically the size of pitas. It seems like
Well, they were square then.
Correct. They were square, but I'm saying, they were not that tall.
Mini ones.
Right. They were not very large. Because again, the shulchan was amasayim orko. So if you got too long, so if an amma is 1.5 feet, you're talking about 3 feet long. That table, it's not that long. A yardstick. You're talking about this long is a yardstick, and then what? Like about a yardstick is like this. Yeah, I'd say about 3 feet. Like this?
No, like.
Less? Okay. Okay, more like this. So it's not that high either. 1.5 amos tall. So that's an amos 1.5 feet. So then another half of 1.5 feet. So you're just a little over 2 feet tall. So it's not that high off the ground either. Okay, but again, so you see the difference on those measurements. It's the same as the Aron, that it's an amma and a half tall, but in terms of the other proportions, it's different. Whereas the Aron was 2.5 long, this is 2 long. Whereas the Aron was 1.5 wide, this is 1 wide. So I just wanted to contrast those measurements. And now let's see this Tam Vadas. This Tam Vadas is Rabbi Moshe Stern.